So the biggest song on urban radio right now isn't a love song. It isn't a song about perseverance. It isn't a song about building wealth, ownership, or legacy. In fact, it's a song called Spin That, where Young Miami is telling the listener to simply spin that shit, and she's calling for the boosters and the scammers to come to the front. And this week, she earned the first number one urban radio single of her solo career. Spin That has also climbed into the top 19 on the Billboard Hot 100, officially becoming one of the biggest songs of the summer. And I'm telling you, nowhere on my bingo card did I have Young Miami making a comeback after the City Girls broke up, let alone owning the summer for hip hop. Because if you've been outside on social media, you've heard it. Whether it's blasting through speakers at a cookout, soundtracking TikTok videos, or shaking a nightclub, this record has become nearly impossible to escape. But while Young Miami is celebrating one of the biggest moments of her career, another conversation has been growing alongside the song's success. The conversation isn't about whether the song is catchy or whether it deserves to be number one, but people are questioning what the song represents. Because while millions of people are dancing to Spin That, Grammy Award winning singer songwriter India Arie is asking a very different question. What exactly are we rewarding? And I know some of y'all are thinking, who asked India? She just jealous and are willing to dismiss India as someone who simply doesn't understand today's music. But I think it's important to remember that this has been her message throughout her entire career. For decades, she has spoken about self respect, positive representation, intentional living, and the responsibility that comes with influencing culture. She has consistently challenged the entertainment industry when she believes it profits from messages that diminish people rather than uplift them. So when she criticized Spin That, she wasn't calling for censorship. She wasn't calling for the song to be removed and demanding a boycott. That's not what this is. She simply argued that when songs with certain messages become massively successful, it's worth asking what those messages say about us as a culture. And honestly, cousins, I understand what she's saying. I feel her. But I also understand why millions of people completely disagree with India. Because let's be real and call a spade a spade. The song is a hit. The beat is infectious. The hook is memorable. The energy is undeniable. It's one of those records that immediately changes the atmosphere when it comes on. And sometimes the biggest songs aren't the deepest songs. Sometimes they're simply the most fun. And there's nothing wrong with admitting it. But here's where I start leaning more towards India Arie. Now, not completely, because the first thing I find interesting is watching people act surprised. This is city girl culture. Young Miami didn't suddenly reinvent herself. She stayed exactly who she introduced herself to be. She literally came into hip hop as one half of City Girls alongside JT. And together they built one of the most recognizable brands in modern rap around getting men to spend money, tricking culture, financial leverage, scamming references, and flipping traditional relationship dynamics on their head. Whether you loved the message or hated it, it was always the message. They have songs like Act Up, Jobs, Twerk. Those songs exist, and they weren't hiding what they were about. It became part of their identity. Hell, JT literally served prison time because of a federal credit card fraud case before the group's commercial breakthrough. This is their lifestyle. And it makes sense the scams and the hustling became part of the duo's public story long before Spin That. So when I see people acting like this record came out of nowhere, I honestly don't understand that surprise. This isn't a new chapter. It's simply a continuation of the same brand that millions of people embraced years ago. But, but let's add the button. I can also acknowledge that that doesn't mean the message is beyond criticism. And it's where I see where India is coming from, like I said earlier. The lyrics celebrate someone who scams and boosts. The music video literally leans heavy into strip club imagery. Like, some people may hear fantasy, others may hear aspiration, and I understand that music is just entertainment. I understand that not every lyric is meant to be taken literally. I mean, hip hop has always exaggerated reality, but entertainment also influences culture. At some point, it's fair to ask whether we're simply reflecting certain behaviors or helping normalize them. Like, I think that conversation is worth having. And for me, there's another layer to this that makes this record even harder to separate from real life. I'm talking about Young Miami's public image. Her relationship with Diddy wasn't private. She openly spoke about receiving lavish gifts, joked about him spending money on her, and publicly embraced aspects of that lifestyle. I mean, by her own account, they were in a sexual relationship and even hinted at being pissed off. Women these days are doing freaky shit at a man's request for financial gain. And we know how Diddy get down. I'm not saying that's what she was doing, but we know. We've seen it, literally. Then came Diddy's federal criminal case. A jury convicted him on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution under the Mann Act. He was acquitted of the racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking charges that prosecutors brought upon him, but many people believe he's still guilty of said abuse and forced sexual activity and drug abuse. And following the verdict, Young Miami submitted a character letter describing Diddy as loving and supportive based on her own personal experiences. She has repeatedly said she cannot speak to sexual assault and physical abuse allegations that do not reflect her own experiences with him. Mind you, Young Miami herself was named in a civil lawsuit filed by producer Rodney Little Rod Jones. In that complaint, Jones made allegations connecting her to activities involving Diddy, including allegations related to sex work and transporting pink cocaine. Young Miami has denied those allegations and they have not been proven in court. I think it's important to be precise because a lawsuit allegation is not the same thing as a conviction. People deserve fairness, but context also matters. For me, it is difficult to separate a song celebrating transactional relationships from an artist whose public image became closely associated with a highly publicized relationship built in part around extravagant spending, sexual interactions, and whose name later appeared in litigation connected to that same world, even though she denies the allegations against her. That doesn't mean she's responsible for someone else's crimes. It doesn't mean allegations should be treated as fact. It simply means that as a listener, all of that context changes how I receive the record. Maybe if this exact song came from someone else, I'd hear it differently. But coming from Young Miami, after everything that's unfolded publicly, it lands differently for me. Again, I see both sides of the coin, but a side nobody is really talking about. And before I end this, I want to discuss Black women carrying the moral weight of an entire culture. The double standard is real. Male rappers have spent decades making songs about violence, selling drugs, robbery, pimping, exploiting women, and every other destructive behavior imaginable. Many of those records become classics, earn platinum plaques. Many were celebrated without nearly the same level of moral scrutiny. Then a woman releases a song about sexual liberation, WAP, or getting men to spend money on them, and suddenly everyone becomes deeply concerned about the future of the culture. That's worth examining too. Black women are often expected to represent the moral compass of hip hop in ways Black men simply are not. Those unequal expectations deserve criticism. But for me, acknowledging that double standard doesn't erase the conversation India Arie is trying to have. Both things can be true at the same time. Women shouldn't be held to impossible standards that men routinely escape. And we should still be willing to ask whether the messages we celebrate are ultimately helping or hurting our communities. Those conversations don't compete with each other, they belong together. So after listening to both sides, this is where I land. I understand why Spin That is the song of the summer. I understand why people love it. I understand why Young Miami is celebrating this moment. I also understand why people think India Arie is overreacting. But if I'm weighing both perspectives, I hear India Arie loud and clear. Not because I think artists shouldn't have creative freedom, not because I think every song needs to be educational, but because I believe culture is shaped by the things we repeatedly reward, celebrate, and normalize. That doesn't mean everyone has to agree with me. In fact, I don't think either side is completely wrong. I think reasonable people can look at the same song, hear the same lyrics, and walk away with different conclusions. And maybe that's exactly why this conversation matters. So now I want to hear from you, cousins. Where do you land on this? Do you lean more towards India's perspective? Do you think Spin That is simply a fun summer anthem that's being overanalyzed? Or are you somewhere in the middle? Because maybe that's the point. The biggest song on urban radio right now isn't about love or ownership or legacy. It's a song called Spin That. Whether that's simply harmless entertainment or a reflection of where our culture is headed, I'll leave that conversation to my cousin. So meet me in the chat. Until then, later.